I'm 75, I've had a marvellous life, way beyond anything I ever would have expected, and I don't think there's anything that I would not do again, and it's a bit sooner than I had planned on, but I'm not having any negative thoughts at all about the whole thing. I'm actually finding it an interesting project to see how it develops, and the good, the bad and the ugly.
We're fortunate in that Tony is just such a positive person. He doesn't see this as, oh, you know, poor me and this, that and the other. He sees it in life. You know, it's just life. He's had a good life. He's done everything he wants to do. Yes, he'd like to do more, I'm sure, like all of us would. But there's nothing that he can say, I wish I'd done that.
Right at the moment, this treatment has reduced the size of the thing in my brain, which is inoperable, of course. And it seems to be stable, but how long it'll be, could be a day, a week, a year, who knows. The standard answer is when you ask 3 months, and in 3 months I'll see 3 months. I used to have a full head of hair, and I haven't had anything like that in 40 years, because I was a marathon runner and a cyclist.
We met at the running club, actually, in Perth. We were both runners. We'd finished a run through the park. I'd gone over to speak to some English friends of mine. Tony was talking to them, and about a year later he asked me out. It only took him a year.
Heather's a better cyclist than I am, but I've got some Australian titles on the velodromes, and it's been a significant part of our life. We own 27 bikes. Heather's a marvellous carer. In fact, too good. She does everything for me and always has. If you didn't have a carer, I don't know how you'd get on. We saw staying in the Cancer Council accommodation in Perth for long periods of time, 6 and 8 months at a time. And the one we stayed in was the one that was mainly single people, and they had to do everything for themselves, feed themselves, do their washing, do everything. If you didn't have a carer, establishing any of these sort of networks or activating them in whatever form you choose to do it, I think would be quite difficult. We had for many years been riding with the Albany Cycle Club, but of course they're all less than half our age. But then the over 50s club we learnt about. We've been riding with them. Well, they started out just every Wednesday for a long time, and we got to know them. There's quite a lot of couples in it, and it's a very social club.
I met Heather and Tony when they joined our bike group, and we rode together 2 or 3 times a week. So we really got to know each other, and we got on really well. Tony had finished his treatment, and they were trying to decide, do they come back to Albany or would it be easier to stay in Perth? All the services were in Perth, and where they lived in Bornholm just felt to be so far away. And I remember saying to her, where does Tony want to be? And she said, oh, he wants to be in Bornholm, you know, Tony. And I said, well, if Tony wants to be in Bornholm and you're happy with that, let's make it work.
For many of us, when we imagine our own death, we often have a place that we're imagining that happening. For some of us, that is our own home, but the idea of having a choice where we might be able to die, and wherever that place is, it's a place that's treating us as a whole person with respect, love, dignity, kindness, not prolonging our dying, but also making our living still good. It's really the circle of people around them that make that a real choice or no choice at all.
I started to think about all the people who I'd been talking to in our cycle group, and they'd all been wondering how Tony was going and saying, can we help? What can we do? How can we help? And I thought, we have this network in our cycle group of support, an awesome network. I just thought there must be some way where we can organise it so that it works well for Tony, it works well for Heather, and it works well for us. All I did was put together a timetable of when people would visit Tony and Heather. Heather was really reluctant to ask people to do something, to go out of their way, to come out. It was a fair travel, you know, some people it was an hour's drive, and she was very reluctant to accept that help. And I said, if we have a roster, it's like once a month, you know, we share it around, we all do something. I spoke to Heather. She said, I miss going to the gym. I used to love going to the gym every Tuesday, every Thursday. I'd go to the gym and then I could have a coffee. I had time out, time to myself in Albany.
Pam approached me and said, look, Heather, we can get a roster going so that there's always someone there so that you can continue going to the gym. It's important for you to keep healthy and fit.
That's as important for her as it is having visitors for Tony. When you're in somebody's house, you're getting to see all their photos, their pictures, what they're doing. It's a much more personal thing. And so we've got to know them at that level. That's been great for Tony, having people come to his place, because he can talk about himself, he can go and get his books out, he can show you things. And when we go out there, all of us, we say, let's go outside, let's have a look at the garden. It's a beautiful property and he enjoys getting outside.
The last couple of days I've spent most of it out in the backyard, where there's a lovely warm spot there until after lunch. And then I can go out the front there and sit in the sun, watch the bird life, watch the cows over the way. There's hardly any cars up this road. Something that's completely foreign to my life experience, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Right at the moment, the chance of me wanting to go to Perth and get another treatment is so low. It's not zero, but it's very close. I'd rather sit in that chair and look down that valley than be stuck up there in hospital, no matter how good it is, because it isn't going to cure it.
As a landlord, you couldn't ask for better tenants, but we don't think of them as tenants. They're our friends. You know, we've had New Year's with them, we've had Christmas with them.
We've been here for 6 years and they've become good friends, and he's very supportive of the current problem, and so our life has settled down here.
They said they'd like to come home, and I said, yeah, sure. If you want to come home, we'll help you in any way we can. Within the first couple of weeks, he had a fall in the toilet. And when he fell in the toilet, he really smashed his face on the bowl, and there was no way to contact anyone.
It was difficult for a while until we got this thing some time ago, which means that when she's not here, she knows that I can call her, or if she doesn't answer, Peter will get it. And if neither of them work, it goes to 000, who will say, what do you need, where are you?
But it's also to give Heather support as well, to reassure her that she knows that if she needs something, and it doesn't matter, 24/7, if she needs help, she just has to ring. I knew that there needed to be aids around the house, so I went ahead and I bought all the grab rails, and Tony and I worked out where he wanted them and how it would help him to have mobility around the house.
Young siding is a support mechanism. There's a few others around that if you had to call on them, they would drop everything and just come.
Because we're in town 4 days a week, we just said to Heather, if ever you need anything and you just don't want to go out or can't get out, just give us a call, because it doesn't bother us either way.
I first met Heather when she came into the shop. She was talking to Stuart for trainers for Tony. The trainer setup is pretty much you can ride your bike in a stationary position. You can go up hills, down hills in a virtual world. Thought I'd take it out and set it up for them. In a small community, it's really good to sort of be connected with your community as a business.
What we rejoice in is the circumstances of someone who is loved in their community, whose community feels that they have the capacity to step forward, and that person and their family is able to accept that love and care. I think particularly in a rural environment, the practical solutions that often people are willing to bring to the table, those are the things that get people through. It's about being open to sharing the journey that you're going through in a way that actually allows those that are supporting you to grow as well as human beings.
We're a close group, we've become closer because we're doing something like this. We're used to being a supportive group, but this is a different experience. But we're talking about it now. We're talking about the end stages of our life, and we often have conversations about what we're doing amongst ourselves to prepare for that. So those conversations are quite wonderful to have. Everybody's very keen to keep going, and I think as we continue, our growth and our development as individuals in a group will be quite special.
The more you see that actually this is just part of life and it's going to happen to me too, I actually think the easier it is for you to die yourself when the time comes. Most people who are involved in caring for someone who's dying find that a really important growth time in their own life when they reflect and learn and perhaps change their priorities, perhaps start to do things really differently themselves. When you give it the dignity of a word such as vigil, that long history of humanity of sitting beside someone who's dying until they're gone and just keeping them company has a dignity and a meaning that sometimes is helpful. And so I think as well as becoming more familiar with dying, I think some of those old words are kind of helpful. It's hard that time sometimes when your job is just to hold a vigil, to respect the person as they still are to look after their body with dignity, but you know that they've gone into that deep place and that they're leaving you.